people will end up taking drugs. I did. I was trying to get away of just escaping that reality.
Hi guys, welcome to Westover's Story episode 3. Today I'm going to be interviewing a guy called Carl who bravely opens up to me about his journey with Crohn's disease. Crohn's disease is where it's a lifelong condition where the stomach becomes inflamed, and it can cause stomach pains, it can cause toiletry issues, and it's a really difficult disability to live with. So I can't wait to hear Carl's story and to try and understand how he's lived with it, how he's coped with it, and how it's also caused him some difficult mental health issues. Because I know that a lot of people out there with Crohn's are suffering from the mental health side of things. So here's Carl telling us his story in his own words.
I would suppose it started at the beginning when I first came down with Crohn's disease. Really, it was about 5 years ago, coming up to 5 years. Just as no, I wasn't. It was just as COVID was hitting. Sorry. So during the COVID, when we first had the first lockdown during COVID, uh, I was working as a area manager for Papa John, and yeah, when COVID hit and we went into full on lockdown, there was a lot of this thing going around about vaccinations, when it, you got to be vaccinated in order to work and stuff like that. And basically, my boss turned around and said to me that it'd be best for me to get the vaccination. And with the scare tactics that were going on during that period as well, everybody needed the vaccination. So I was panicking because my wife is she's disabled as well, so she has mental health issues as well.
Yeah.
And you know, I was like really panicky about going home and taking COVID to her. So I decided to have the vaccination anyway. And I think after the second vaccination, within the 6 months, uh, within a month of that, I started getting severe stomach pains. And they weren't like your normal stomach pains, they're not like a normal cramp. It's kind of like dots all over the place as it jumps around. And I weren't able to go to the toilet either. It was struggling like crazy to go to the toilet. So I pushed the doctors, went down to have a checkup. They basically just said that, it's a normal stomach problem, uh, just to carry on with your normal day. And I did that, carried on, still not same. After about 2 weeks, I again went back to the doctor saying something's not right. It is something seriously wrong. And the the one doctor pushed to get me in for more exams, more tests done, and eventually they found out that I had Crohn's disease. And to be fair, that it didn't hit me at first. It didn't take that much of an effect on me at first. I thought, all right, well, I'll carry on as my normal day, because at the time I didn't know too much about it, as most people don't. A lot of people
Yeah.
don't know about the disease. It's very, very unspoken about.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I ended up getting the test done, diagnosed with Crohn's, given it about 2 weeks to a month before it really started to take effect on me. And just a bit of background, before I came down with Crohn's disease, I was kickboxing, doing kickboxing twice a week. I was at the gym 4 times a week. I was working full time, so I was the fittest of fit. I was
Yeah,
very, very strong and everything.
living a
And
really healthy life basically, and
oh
then all
yeah,
of a sudden it's sort of twisted.
I wouldn't say healthy as in like diet wise, because one of the issues that I got is I used to be an addict as well. And when I was an addict, I lost all my teeth because I was rubbing, the drugs into my gums and everything, and I
Sure.
lost all my teeth. So I've only got three teeth left. So it's really difficult for me to eat specific foods anyway. So my diet is very all over the place. So having to deal with that, as well as, the Crohn's disease, and cutting down on all of the foods that I have to cut down on, it takes a massive toll on your body. And it put me in a right down period where I just lost all hope in life. For even even up until the day that I had the operation, I was still well, I'm still hopeless now. I still feel like there's no worth in me at all, because compared to what I was to what I am now is like it's a completely different person.
Yeah. Is that
And
is
it
that because of the diagnosis and obviously the way that you've got to live your life now with this with the Crohn's disease? Is it? I remember you obviously you mentioned to me that it's had your mental health has taken a battering because of it and your lifestyle.
oh yeah, anxiety, the anxiety that comes with the disease, like I can sort of come around to dealing with the stomach pains. You become sort of used to them, and you kind of work out whether or not you need to take a laxative, or you can figure it out just by the pains and the aches that you're getting. But the anxiety and the depression that come with it are unbelievable. The worry about going outside, and I know, when a lot of people who suffer with mental health, they go out and they think that people can see this, they can see that there's something wrong with them, and most people don't, which is it's an invisible disease. You can't see it, but the anxiety that comes with it when you go outside and you're worried about, you know and I know it sounds quite mad, but when you're thinking about, I need to break wind, and then that anxiety triggers in you when you go into a full-on meltdown about, if I break wind now, I'm going to be in trouble, or am I going to be okay? I call it fart roulette, because I've tried to put a bit of a positive spin on it,
Of course,
just
yeah.
to try and make myself feel a little bit better about it. But it's that anxiety that creates such a barrier between reality and your own mind, because you're stuck in that sort of area where you don't want to go outside, and you're thinking, if I do, how long do I need to go out for? Should I eat food now, or should I wait and eat food when I come back? And then all these different questions are running through your mind, and that creates such a cage in your mind. It's like a jail cell that you just can't get out of, because no matter how you try, you ain't breaking through those bars. And
Yes.
that's where I think Crohn's has a massive effect on your mental health. Like, a lot of people do talk about how Crohn's affects them physically, but for me, it affects me more mentally than it does physically. It did take a big hit to my physical health, and it did slow me down. And obviously, at the time before the operation, I did lose a lot of weight. I went down to 9 stone. But that problem that you have with the mental side of it, and I think the physical side kind of exacerbates that, if you know what I mean. It makes that other side of it a little bit more prominent in your mind.
And you were saying earlier that that makes total sense, and I understand. When I was younger, I actually used to have really bad. I had a biopsy. They thought I was celiac IBS. I didn't know what it was, and I found it really difficult at school because I was terrified of going to school in case I need to go to the toilet, and these stomach pains would come on so quick. So I do understand that, and I found it quite embarrassing. It was really hard.
Yeah.
I couldn't talk about it to anyone, even as a teenager. Although I thankfully grew out of it, which was really lucky. But can you elaborate on the mental health? I know earlier you mentioned that it can be quite an embarrassing thing for people to talk about, and I think that people with Crohn's disease find it difficult to explain and to share how it affects them.
Well, I think it's it makes it more difficult to be, like, you kind of lose touch with your friends and reality, because the worry and the problems that you have to deal with up here about whether you need to go to the toilet, whether you should eat, whether you shouldn't eat, what you shouldn't eat, and all that, just it fills up all of your mind.
Yeah, yeah,
So if you do go out and you do think, and you do bite the bullet and go outside and bother with your mates, go to a pub or whatever, you're never going to really enjoy it, because you're always going to be questioning and worried about what's going on in the back. And that's where I think the anxiety and the depression have such a hold on people, because you feel so secluded from life, that and you don't feel like there's a way out. You feel like you're just stuck in this place where everybody else is able to go and have fun, but you are stuck in the house, and it's through no fault of your own. You know what I mean? So I suppose it's kind of like you're grieving your old self in a way.
Yeah.
So you grieve
Yeah.
who you used to be, and that's what makes it a little bit more difficult then, because the self-hatred comes in. You start to hate yourself because not only are you letting your friends down, but you feel like you're letting yourself down because you can't overcome that barrier of getting up and
Self-destruct.
going out. And it that sort of thing is what I think takes so much of an effect on a person's mind that it drives them into. I mean, it could drive them into anything really. People will end up taking drugs. I did. I started looking back at drugs a bit more. I was trying to get away of just escaping that reality. The one thing I did that did help me a lot was gaming. Where I started gaming a lot more because I could focus a little bit more on what was going on the TV, and it took my mind away from things. Like I like really difficult games, things that are like puzzles and stuff like that. So I think that's where the biggest effect has on you is that anxiety and depression.
Okay. Did you take drugs? So did you get diagnosed with Crohn's and then start taking drugs?
Well, I was taking drugs before, but I went heavily on them after I was diagnosed. Once it started to take a massive effect on me, and I started to learn a bit more about the disease, that's when I started to think I got no other way out of it apart from
Yeah.
sitting in the house and taking drugs.
Were you worried? I assume you weren't, because you obviously weren't in your mental health wasn't in a good state. But were you worried that when you were taking drugs, it was going to cause the Crohn's to be worse and irritate it even more potentially?
Not necessarily. I've heard a lot of people take CBD and stuff like that, and I've heard a lot of positives about it. So that's where I thought, trying to smoke a bit of weed may help. And I did smoke a little bit of weed, and it did help me to some extent. But in helping me kind of forget about the pains and the problems, it made my paranoia and my anxiety go that little bit more
To
and
the
get a
next
little
level,
bit
yeah,
more.
yeah, of course,
And
yeah,
that's the thing. And that's what it did. And in the end, I was like, I need to cut it out. I need to give it up. I did push on it for about 2 years after, quite hard. But I had a real bad period where my body just weren't right, and it sent me into a complete meltdown. And I ended up having to go to the hospital to find out what was going on. And in the end, they basically told me that your anxiety, because your anxiety is so high, I was smoking the weed, and that just made it just go up in the air. And that put me into a complete paranoia meltdown. And
wow.
that's sort of what it did. Like I said, it's the mental health side of it is nothing to be laughed at. The problem is, I find with a lot of medical things like Crohn's disease, people focus on the drugs to help alleviate the symptoms, but they don't focus on the drugs to alleviate the mental health side of things.
That makes sense. Yeah,
You're kind of left to your own devices with that sort of thing.
yeah.
And that's why I find you get caught in that cage where you're just stuck and you can't escape any of it.
Do you think there should be more? Is there a lot of support for people with Crohn's? Is there a lot of like mental health support? Because obviously that's definitely, I think people that I know with the disease do also struggle with the mental health aspect, and they're going out and their life, it just changes your life. It's a really horrible disease to have.
But
Um,
I think the biggest part of it is that two people, it doesn't affect two people the exact same way. I think that's where it becomes so hard to find um, that help. I did reach out to Mind, um, and I reached out to another mental health institution as well to help. I became part of the Crohn's and colitis movement, and helping them. I was donating to them twice a week, and I was doing quite a bit to try and push videos out on TikTok as well, making more of a positive spin on things to try and make people feel a little bit more comfortable in themselves. But it's such a gray area with the mental health side of it that I don't think there's not a lot of specialists that you can go to that can help you with the mental health side of Crohn's.
what advice? Because there are going to be people watching this with hope. Hopefully people will watch this and that have also got Crohn's that might be going through the same thing, and maybe you could say some words that can. I know you can't fix people, but is there any advice you give to people that have maybe just been diagnosed with Crohn's?
Of course. The thing is that Crohn's disease is a lifelong disease, but it's kind of like you won't become used. I think the biggest problem is that you feel alone, and you should never feel alone. The best thing to do is to talk about it. Make sure that you have your partner or somebody that you trust that you can sit down with and you can explain to them how you're feeling. Because if you have one person that can understand, then why not be able to get more people to understand?
Yeah. And
that's, I think, the biggest thing is that it's hard to get people to understand what you're going through because they're not feeling it. The way I look at it is like a balloon, right? If you have a normal balloon and you blow air into it, there's only a certain extent that balloon's going to go before it explodes. Don't let that be you. Even if you got to do it little by little, take a little bit of time, talk about it. Phone 111, find a friend that you can trust, go to a doctor, and just make sure that you were looking after your mental health.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Look, I'm still recording, so I'll say bye on here, and then I'll just close it off, and I'll message you. So yeah, look, thanks so much. Is there anything else you want to say, Carl? Are there any other things that you want to elaborate on or talk about?
Just don't go through it alone. That's probably the best thing I can say right now.
To talk to people and like reach out to people. It's so important, isn't it, to talk to people, friends, family, and explain your symptoms, explain how you're feeling. I know that probably can be really difficult for people to do in that situation, but get on it as early as possible.
The embarrassment of having the disease and what it does to you. I think that's the biggest barrier. But at the end of the day, we all go to the toilet. We all have to take a poo at some point. So it's not that much of an uncommon thing.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Yeah, very true. All right, okay. Well, look, thank you so much for sharing your story with me. I really appreciate it.
No problem at all. Happy to do it.
So yeah, awesome. Look, I'm sure I'll be in touch soon, and we'll have a catch up.
Yeah, thank you for giving people a voice as well. You're a fantastic man.
No worries, Carl. That's what I'm here for. I appreciate you sharing your story with me. So
yeah, I'll speak to you very soon. Okay.
Yeah. Cheers, Carl. Take care, mate.
Bye.
Guys, that was a very interesting interview. I've done a bit of research on Crohn's, but I really wanted to let Carl tell his story the way he wanted to tell it without me asking too many questions, because we're all aware that it's a stomach problem, and it's a lifelong disease, but it clearly affects people and it causes anxieties, mental health, and it's a disease that people feel embarrassed to talk about. As Carl said, we all need to go for a number 2, and when you've got a disability that is messing around with that, I totally understand how it can be embarrassing. But the people out there that have just been diagnosed with Crohn's or that have Crohn's, please talk to people, please open up to people, because there's never going to be judgment, and I feel that we should raise more awareness around this disability, because I think there are a lot of people out there struggling with Crohn's by the sounds of it. And yeah, it's one of them disabilities that you can't see, and maybe that makes it hard for people to understand. But Carl, thank you so much for sharing your story and your journey with us. I really appreciate it. Guys, catch me next week for episode 4, where I'll be interviewing another male, and he's going to be telling us his story all about mental health. I appreciate you watching. Have a good week. Over and out.